Hello there, everybody. It's Monday, which means I got 4 more days of this shit to go. Man, I can't wait till I can retire. It's not too far off. I got another, I don't know, another 7 or 8 years, I guess. I'll be able to retire. Hopefully I'll still be young and virile enough to enjoy it when it comes time. Yep. So how's everybody today? I don't have anybody. I'm talking like there's somebody here, but there's nobody here yet. I just like to pretend, kind of like, about 1/3 of America is out there pretending. Yeah, those guys. Or girls, or whatever you want to call them. Yeah, those. They're pretending. Playing make-believe. Anyway. Yep. So, another day, another dollar. Worked a little overtime today. I'll probably be pulling 10 hours the rest of the week, 10 hours a day, something like that. We got the okay to go ahead and start working overtime again, so I'm on board. I'm all for that. If anybody knows anything about me, they know I like my overtime. But I worked 9 hours a day last week, so I did 9 today. I'll do 10 tomorrow and the rest of the week, probably. I'm not sure what the hell's going on here. Waiting on this fucking stupid stoplight. Well, I got a red light now. So I guess my daughter's not going to be on here. Apparently she got a job, which is good. That's what I've been waiting on her to do, to get a job. She's had her share of problems over the years, and this is going to be a big step for her in the right direction, I believe. Hopefully, if she's able to stick to her guns and keep this job, she'll do all right. Hello, viewers. How are you guys today, guys and gals? It's unfortunate I don't have something that tells me, like I don't see pictures or anything of you when you come on, so I don't know whether I'm talking to guys or girls, and I don't want to misgender anyone, and that might make them a little upset, but I say get over that shit real quick. Anyway, we're talking about lies and deception. So I listen to a podcast every morning, and the latest, they had that Charlie Kirk thing yesterday, the funeral and the celebration of life, which from what I understand was pretty moving. I caught bits and pieces of it. I didn't watch. Oh, there you are. Hello. I was just talking about you. It was all good. Don't worry about it. But I was just talking about you. But anyway, so they had the Charlie Kirk celebration of life yesterday, and that was pretty moving. Now, like I said before, I only saw bits and pieces of it. Just, as I was panning through Facebook and Instagram and places like that, I saw little clips. And from what I saw, it looked like it was pretty emotional. And they had 60,000 people show up for this thing. That should tell you. And like when somebody else passed away, I don't know, say 4 or 5 years ago, everybody made a martyr of this guy. And I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to give him the martyrship that that everybody thinks he deserved, but it was a guy that Darren Chauvin, or whatever his name, Chauvin, went to jail over because they said that he murdered him, which wasn't true. He was a heroin or a fentanyl addict, and he overdosed on fentanyl. That's what killed him. But anyway, he was a criminal, and well, people martyred him, and then the left wing wire nuts went out and started, tearing up cities and their own communities and burning shit down and attacking people and murdering people and destroying police cars and, spray paint walls and taking over cities and shit like that. Now, I don't know how many of those scumbags were out there in the streets doing that, but there's a big difference between the left and the right. Now, I know I've said over and over again, I'm not going to get into politics and this and that and the other thing, and I'm not really trying to do that, but that seems to be a topic for discussion these days, because there were 60,000 people at this stadium yesterday for Charlie Kirk's remembrance and celebration of life. Not one person burned anything, not one person attacked anybody, not one person spray painted anything, not one person destroyed any police cars or attacked any innocent bystanders. So you tell me who represents what in this country. You know what I mean? 60,000 people. I bet you not many people showed up for that other guy's funeral. The one that Darren Chauvin supposedly killed, supposedly choked to death. Yeah, that guy. Of course, like I said, I'm not going to say his name because his name is useless and shouldn't even be part of our vocabulary. But that's just how it goes, I guess. But so the latest development, now, like I said, I didn't watch this thing yesterday, and I haven't really been keeping up with it because I've had so much other shit going on. But the latest development is that apparently the surgeon or the coroner or whoever was, doing the autopsy or whatever on Charlie Kirk says that they found the bullet that killed Charlie Kirk and that it was just beneath the skin, and that his backbone, he had such a good bone structure, or that's not how they put it. What was exactly they said? That he was in such good shape, and that, what is that word I'm looking for? Anyway, he was really healthy. And that his spinal bones stopped the bullet. Okay, now let's go back for a minute to September 10th. So the FBI, of course, they got the shooter. The FBI, Derek Chauvin, yeah, I know. Yeah, he should have never gone to prison in the first place, but the left gets what the left wants, if enough of them bitch about it, I guess. Now, you have to remember that they got the shooter, supposedly, and that he used 30-06. Now, 30-06 is a pretty heavy round, okay? And they're speculating, or they're guesstimating, that the shot was taken from 175 to 225 yards from where Charlie was, right? Okay, now remember this, 30-06, okay? That's a bullet. It's about this fucking long, and the head of that son of a bitch is about the size of the end of my pinky, okay? So, they're saying that his bone structure was so good, and his body was so resilient that the bullet was stopped by his spinal cord or his vertebrae. Okay, now if you really think about it, that's impossible. There's no way. There's nothing in here that's going to slow a bullet down that much. Nothing. That's all bone and gristle. Or, I'm sorry, he's got bone in his neck, but the rest of it's just gristle and muscle, right? Basically. There's nothing really solid there to take the impact. And I saw, because they're talking about there wasn't any exit wound. Now they're saying it must have been a miracle from God because they found the bullet, you know, just below the surface of the skin, which, if you ask me, is bullshit. There's no possible way that a round from a 30-30 rifle, if you can shoot a deer at 200 yards with a 30-30 round, go in one shoulder, through the rib cage, and out the other shoulder, and leave an exit wound, there's no way possible, as far as I'm concerned. Now, I'm not a ballistics expert by any means, but, you know, like I said, I do have firearms, plural, and I do know quite a bit about, you know, firearms and ammo and, you know, velocity and things like that. I've got a 30-30, and I can shoot a pumpkin with my 30-30 rifle from 75 yards, and the fucking pumpkin will explode. Okay, that's how powerful these rounds are. You know, the bigger calibers anyway. And they're saying it was a miracle. And now Charlie apparently is the Man of Steel. You know, he must have had been, you know, the Man of Steel is what the coroner said, or the surgeon or somebody anyway. And I'm thinking to myself, now I know just from looking at the rifle that was supposedly used, there's no way that rifle that they showed was the rifle that killed Charlie Kirk. It can't be. So you guys know my introduction to my video today was lies and deception. I feel like we're being lied to yet again. Of course, this is nothing new with the FBI or the CIA or any of those other alphabet programs they have, or law enforcement agencies. You know, of course, this was more than likely an organized hit anyway. The Trans Tifa fella decided he was going to go out and, you know, get his 5 minutes of fame. Actually, he got a little more than that. And but anyway, there's just no way. If anybody has any comments or anything about ballistics and how they work, and if they think this is possible, make sure you leave it down in the comments, because I'm interested to see what your outtake is on it. Now, of course, that led me to watch a few videos today, and there was a guy on there that was a Marine who was actually a ballistics expert. That's what he did. He shot people in the Marines. And he was saying that also that there was no way. They took a dummy with an elk bone, you know, like a big elk, you know, like you find in Canada and places like that. And this bone was really big. It was probably an inch and a half in diameter, maybe a little more. And they put it on one of those ballistics dummies, you know, that they shoot to see how powerful a rifle or ammo is. And they put the elk bone across the chest on this thing, and then they shot it with a 30-06, the same rifle that was supposed to have been used in the Charlie Kirk assassination. They shot this thing, it shattered the bone, and it went all the way through the dummy. But yet they expect us to believe, you know, there's 200 million people out here that own firearms. I mean, do they really think we're that stupid to think that a round can't enter the body but not exit the body, especially one that powerful? Even from 200 yards, that bullet still has a lot of velocity. And as I said before, there's nothing in your neck and throat area to stop that thing except for your backbone. And the backbone is likely one of the softest bodies because it has to be flexible because you move your neck. You know what I mean? And you hear about people, you know, simple falls, and people break a bone in their neck or their back, and then they're never able to walk again. They're quadriplegic or paraplegic, you know? So you can't tell me that even from 200 yards that a backbone or a vertebrae could stop a round with that much velocity and the size of that thing. You know, they say that, I mean, that's a pretty heavy round. Now, if you look up on Google, because Google's your friend, 30-06 leaves an exit wound size of a mini basketball. That's right, it does. And how they expect us to believe that that didn't happen is beyond me. You know, there's something that's not right about this whole situation. You know, there was sightings. There was probably, I've seen videos of at least 3 other people that had firearms on them, caught on camera. One was that old man, you know, the one with glasses that said, I did it. Yeah, that guy, they let him go, but they found fucking kitty porn on his freaking phone. So, you know, he's in jail anyway. And then there was another guy that didn't get caught, but he was walking through the crowd. He was dressed in black, had on a black glove, which from what I understand, you know, assassins, paid assassins, government assassins, usually wear a glove when they make a hit, because the gunpowder doesn't get on their hand and it doesn't leave any residue, the gunpowder residue. So that's the reason they do that. And it was obvious that the guy was carrying a gun. This one's a little far-fetched, but there was another video that showed a couple of people that were standing almost directly behind Charlie Kirk that what appeared to be baseball signals, like you know touching your hat, licking your fingers, and you know swiping your arm and shit like that. I don't know how many of you have seen that video, but it's out there. And they said that there possibly was somebody on the other side of the crowd that you would need to be to shoot somebody in the neck. But it's just speculation. And I'm speculating as well. But I've watched the videos and it makes you think. You know what I mean? They were out to get this guy because he was a public figure that told the truth. He wouldn't hold back on anything. And I'm sure he hurt a lot of people's feelings. You know, these people that are out there, oh, he hurt my feelings. You know, big deal. Whatever. They didn't like it, you know. Yesterday, like I said, I didn't see the whole funeral, but Tucker Carlson was talking. And he referred back to the days of Jesus, you know, when Jesus was walking the earth and he had these disciples and people around him, and what he was saying was getting out to a lot of people, you know, and they didn't want him talking because he was telling truth about, you know, leaders and people and the devil, and he was, you know, telling people to watch out for the, you know, the deceivers. He was telling people he was the Son of God, which I actually truly believe 100% that Jesus was the Son of God or is God in man's clothing, period. You can't convince me any different. Now, you know, you'll have these Satanists and these atheists that'll tell you, oh, you know, Jesus was just a prophet. No, he wasn't. He was the Son of God. That's period. I don't care what you say. All right, back to what I was talking about. So Tucker Carlson was saying that they were talking about Jesus and how Jesus went around, you know, and he was spreading the truth. And these people got together and thought, you know, we don't want this guy talking because he's going to turn people against us. So why not just kill him and he won't talk anymore? So that's basically the same thing that happened in this scenario. Somebody, whether it was a far left leftist, tyrannical group, or someone in the government, or, you know, it was an organized hit anyway. You know, kind of like Malcolm X. You ever notice that when people start talking, people start dying? It's been happening quite a bit here the last few years, especially the last few years. But, you know, you had what? John F. Kennedy, you know, called out the secret society. What happened? The Democrats killed him. Then you had JFK, or not JFK, Martin Luther King, MLK. You know, he was talking about uniting the races, getting people to get along, not judging people because of the color of their skin, but the content of their character. What happens? The Democrats kill him. Okay? So then you have Malcolm X, who was preaching basically the same thing. You know, he was a little bit far-fetched in some of his ideals, and some of the things I've seen, he was right on. You know what I mean? And what happened? They killed him. You know, they killed Lincoln because he wanted to free the slaves. You know what I mean? They had, what was his name? Booth, I think, was the assassin. You know, so you got all these cases throughout history where, you know, people started talking and people didn't like it. So they lost their life over. They paid the ultimate price for telling the truth and for making things known. And, you know, Charlie was bringing a lot of people to God through his talks at these universities. But he was also making these kids aware that, hey, you know, you're spending all this money on your education, and they're not teaching you the things that are going to help you or, you know, or enhance your career. They're indoctrinating you, you know, to hate, and which is basically true. A lot of these freaking whack job professors at some of these major universities and schools are doing nothing but indoctrinating your kids, you know. And apparently this you know, he was brought up in a Republican conservative home, and he was always, you know, a really good student, and he got into college on a scholarship and things like that. But then he got to college, and they said that after he got to college and he started hanging out with these weirdos, that his attitude changed and he became really angry, you know. And you know, that doesn't have, it's like when your kids go to school and they come back with a completely different attitude than the way you raised them and the morals and the values that you taught them along the years. They go to college and they lose all that. You know what I mean? And that just goes to show that there's something going on in the colleges and universities and schools and elementary and junior high and high school that are making these kids, you know, become angry and become, you know, far leftist. Of course, you know, that happens every day to us as well, you know, with the media and the government and all these public officials, you know, who are left-leaning, you know. That's why I don't watch the news. I could care less about the fucking news. Let's see here, what's going on. The more content you watch on Charlie's channel, the more you like him, the angrier it makes you. Yeah, me too. Watch out, because you might get on the hit list. I don't care if I'm on the hit list. I really don't at this point. You know, I've been doxxed before. You know, I had, back when they were trying to take the Confederate monument down in St. Louis. You know, I voiced my opinion about it to these, you know, these Antifa and Trans-Tifa groups, and, you know, I made sure that they knew who I was, you know, and they fucking doxed me and all that bullshit, you know. But I'm not worried about it. I really ain't, you know, because, you know, everybody's allowed to have their opinion. You know what I mean? By the rights in the U.S. Constitution, you know, God gave me the right to run my mouth. Whether I'm right or wrong, I have the right to run my mouth. But whether people like it or not, I'm allowed to run my mouth. You know, my kids didn't like me running my mouth at them when they were young. You know what I mean? Because they didn't like what Daddy had to say about life and about responsibility and things like that. And they were a little rebellious against me as kids. But they learned over the years that, hey, Daddy was absolutely right. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to worry about threats. You know, I'm prepared if it comes down to defending myself. I'm totally prepared for that day if it comes. So I'm not really too much worried about that. All I know is that Charlie Kirk was killed because he believed in something, because he was telling the truth and he was exposing, the corruption and the false ideology in these colleges and schools and things like that. And they didn't like what he had to say, so they murdered him for it. They hired somebody to hit him. Now, as I said, when I, going back a little bit in my conversation, when I looked at that rifle, when the pictures of the rifle first came out, I thought to myself, that there's no way possible that could be the rifle. You know what I mean? First of all, it is a bolt action rifle, okay, which, usually these dumbasses, they want to use a semi-automatic weapon, or as a lot of people call it, an assault rifle, when there's no such thing as an assault rifle, just to let you guys know. It just something didn't seem right, because the scope on this rifle was right where you would load the round. And, there was, how did he get up on top of that building? Not one video shows him carrying a rifle to the top of that building. None. So it's speculated that he broke that rifle down, took it on the building, set up, put the rifle back together. Now, if you know anything about ballistics, and you know anything about rifles, and you know anything about zeroing in your sights and things like that, if you take that gun apart and you carry it, now especially the way that particular scope was set on that rifle, would have been moving around. If he had broke it down and put it in that book bag he had, or whatever, backpack, that scope, because it wasn't secured on a rail, would have been moving around, and it would have thrown off his shot. Okay, first of all. Second of all right, so once he was up there, he made his kill shot, if he even's the one that made it, if he's even the one that pulled the trigger. I'm starting to have my doubts about that, but we'll just go with it because that's what the FBI says. So I doubt very seriously that he would have taken that rifle, broke it down, and put it in his bag again, because that's not how it works. Also, when they showed him jumping off the top of the building in one of the videos, there was no rifle. He didn't throw a rifle on the ground and then jump down behind it. It didn't happen. When he was running through the parking lots and shit like that, and the cameras caught him, he had no gun in his hand. So how did that gun get in the woods? And here's what really bothers me about that is, why would he take the time? If you're trying to get away from a murder scene, first of all, you're not going to break down your weapon. That takes a few minutes to do that. Okay, number one. Number two, if you get out in the woods and that's a drop point for your your gun or whatever, you're not going to put it back together. You know what I mean? You're going to leave it the way that I got something in my door here. You're going to leave it the way you carried it. You know what I mean? Well, like I said, there were no videos of him or anything carrying this rifle. Now, I'm going to lose my signal here for a second, guys, so just bear with me. So why was that gun fully assembled in the woods? And why the hell was there a box? And they said that it was wrapped in a dark colored towel. I don't remember seeing any dark colored towel, or any towel period for that matter, shown in the photos from the crime scene. So it makes absolutely no sense. So there's some lies and deception going on somewhere today, especially today. It's a damn shame that they can't just come out and tell us exactly what happened. You know what I mean? But that's our government for you. But anyway, so that's the end of my talk for today. I think I've rambled on enough about this. I'm going to take off. You guys have a good evening. Let's see. Wait a minute. You would have to recite the scope. Yes, you would have to recite the scope. And how would you do that? He didn't have time. You know what I mean? Now, they said he was there a few hours before, but even still, there's no way, you know, that he could recite it that quick without, you know, busting off a round or two, at least. You know what I mean? So I got a feeling that we've been lied to and deceived yet again, because the government and these alphabet agencies know that, you know, there are people out there that aren't keen to this shit. So they can lie to people and get away with it. You know what I mean? They ain't fooling me. And like I said, I'm no ballistics expert. I'm no gun expert, but I know for a fact that a 30-06 round, even from 200 yards, when it goes through flesh, it's not, you know, a little bone like a backbone in a human is not going to stop that round, period. It doesn't, that's not how it works. Now, you got some people out there, oh, you know, it was divine intervention and, you know, and things. It was a miracle. Yeah, bullshit. It didn't happen that way. And that's what they're trying to cover up. But anyway, so you guys take it easy. I'll be back on Wednesday. Hopefully, hopefully, Jason, you're not right. They don't come after me. But if they do, that's okay too. You guys have a good day. We'll talk at you later.